Hi, well, welcome back to Liquid Lunch here. We've got Alan Reed, Geomancer, and Druid. He's one of the little people of Stonehenge.
I'm one of the
right?
little people.
Yeah, we're working with the wee folk, yeah.
Are you really a Druid?
Yes, I am. In 1994, I went to New York and met the, who's still the head guy at Druidry in England, Philip Cargom, and was initiated into the order. And it was at Rhinebeck, New York, at the Omega Center, where they do, that weekend there was, Michael Jordan was there doing a basketball workshop, Bobby McFerrin was doing a voice workshop, and the Druids were there doing a Druidry workshop, and they were building a stone wall, they were building a log cabin. There's like 4 or 5 conferences going all from the good weather to the freeze up.
Wow.
In Rhinebeck, New York, one of the oldest little towns in America.
As a Druid, what?
Go ahead.
What do you do? Have you? No, but seriously. So you've been initiated into. What is a Druid? What does that mean to be a Druid today?
Yeah, a Druid is a neo-pagan culture. Basically, we're the pre-Christians. If you look on, there's a famous biblical coin. It says, "Christ is mon Dru." Christ is my Druid. Christ, the root of the word Christ is crystal, the light.
Right.
So the whole thing with Druidry is all let light and love and peace settle the way. We don't curse nobody. We don't potion anybody up, but we feed nature and we build groves. Groves of stones and groves of trees. And they act as biocommunicators. And they built up the prana of the earth. It's basically the original neural net.
Okay.
Before the invent of the internet.
All right. Now we're talking about one of the things we're talking about today is the grid.
Yes.
And camera work, and I mentioned to you about Mary Hardy,
Yes.
right? Or I just asked you about her before the show today. I've seen some awesome stuff that she's done. What she says, if I understand what she's talking about correctly, is that the pyramids and Stonehenge are related to each other,
Yes.
and that what she says is that the Stonehenge was the control panel for the pyramids.
Yes.
And they're both on the grid, the Earth grid.
Yes. And you know, we're going to look. Druidry goes way, way back, okay? They brought us the first universities. To become a Druid, you had to do 11 years of study. You first start off as a bard. You learn how to write. You learn how to sing. You learn how to be a raconteur. Then you become an ovid. So you're starting to master the alchemy now, right? And then once you've mastered the alchemy, they give you the Druidry. But in Irish tradition, they always gave you the pen before they gave you the sword. You have to develop your emotions before you can become a warrior. Right now, we give the guns first before we develop the character of the person.
That's funny because even our last guest, Zoltan, was in the Navy before he became a raconteur.
It needs to be depth before the...
Yeah, so in Druidry, Stonehenge you're mentioning, it's a lot of people haven't acknowledged it, this aspect of it, but when I look at Stonehenge, I see a horseshoe magnet. They left us a symbol of the hoof of the horse. It's a U-wave, right? And you enter through the gateway, which is a triad, the pillar, the doorway, right? And you know about a doorway, we standing in the now. The past is behind us, the future's ahead. What are we going to do? Are we going to be stuck in the past, or are we going to move forward and evolve, right, as a society? Druidry was illegal, just became illegal again in England after 460 years of being illegal during the Inquisition, right? So a lot of the knowledge went subversive just because of protection. Same here with the North American Indian shamans.
Right.
The first thing the colonists did was get the people of power, let's round them up, let's get them out of the circuit so we can crumble the society. But they just stopped practicing. And in Mexico as well, like, you know, the water drum was banned, so they made the water drum out of a steel pot in the kitchen, and they would drum at night, and then the guards would come in the morning looking for the drum. No drum to be had. All the pots were hanging in the kitchen again, right?
Right.
So it was a way of carrying the tradition on. And Druidry's like that as well. It's not a male, it's misconceived as a male art. It's not, it's both. They welcome the feminine, right? They actually develop the feminine in the initiates.
Right.
Because when a man's in his good seat of his feminine, he's much more compassionate. And we wouldn't be killing children and women in war.
Right.
We would just go for the warriors, right?
There would be peace and balance,
Yeah.
which is what sometimes we're lacking. But
So
it's funny. Sorry, go ahead.
So the Druids understood how the planet functioned electromagnetically and emotionally. So they would bring in certain trees to bring in certain energies from the heavens and trickle charge it back into the earth. And then they would stand the stones up on the meridians of the earth, or the little acupuncture points, similar to the body. Exact, you know, there's energies that flow in, they meet, and then they redistribute, just like the electrical panel that powers this room up.
Right.
You have breakers, right? You have dedicated switches, and they stood the stones up all through, from the north all the way into the pyramids.
Right.
And the pyramid's basically a balancer to the planet. It's placed right at the equator, and it's for a reason, right? And you know, the north, as you go further north, geology, the vibration hastens, it goes faster. Just like how an orange grows, it vectors into the top, but at the center it's very fat.
Right.
And the equator, the pulse is very slow, but as we go north, it picks up so much that it creates ice. And now the planet's moving too. You know, the magnetic pole is moving 40 miles. In the paper the other day, the Globe and Mail, 40 miles a year towards Russia. So they're talking pole shift coming. They actually said it in the paper. It was
Actually, that was surprising. There's a lot more being exposed in mainstream media, it seems, in like small doses.
They're
So it
gearing
makes you
everybody up
question.
because the
Right.
planet's about ready either to roll, wobble, or reset its magnetic orientation. And it's happened 3 times. We know geologically already on the era of the planet, but it happens like millions of years in between successions. But all the diameters are there. And Japan right now, it's interesting, the quaking that's going on the planet. It's like the Earth's going to go through a little bit of a chiropractic treatment. You know, when your bones are out of a line and then you get lined up, it hurts just for that moment of alignment, but then you feel so good after.
It needs to go bad before it gets better.
And we talk about 2012. I heard mentioning earlier their speaker as well. The planets are all going to line up for the first time, just like a fancy pool shot. And a lot of people are panicking, like this is, you know, the end of it. I believe it's the new beginning.
That's right.
Because we're going to wake up, because all those mechanisms, just like a Swiss timepiece, are going to be first time in a long time line up, and there's going to be a shift. Bells are going to ring, literally, right?
Right.
And some places, you know, Japan's an interesting place because as conscious as they are, they've been very industrialized for a long time and produced a lot of toxins and thrown it back out into the system. And some of those things have hurt the Earth. And the Earth is interesting because it is a conscious being. We're children of the Earth, right? And we go back to the Earth.
They're not the only ones.
Well, the rest
Alan,
are
because we haven't exactly been
Right.
been a clean operator here in Canada or the U.S. or
Yes.
Europe.
So, you know, one mistake we're making as a society is the massive deforestation of the planet, both for industry, but for creating farm fields, and we're not replanting. So we're changing wind currents, which change weather patterns, which change precipitation. In areas that didn't get rain, get a lot of rain now. Areas that got rain aren't getting rain. Like California's kind of drying up, burning up. You know, other places are flooding up. Like this year in Brazil, like so much rain in the rainforest, like slides, you know, where mountainsides just slip away, right? And the big thing with California, it's lost its polymers. It's lost its fungi. The fungi knit the planet together. It's the neural net of the planet. They send out all these hyphens and they all communicate to each other. And there's one in Colorado that's something like one species of fungi has a radius of over 2,000 miles. And it's all connected to one species of fungi. And,
yeah, I've heard about those. There's one in Michigan too that's like.
Oh, they're all over the planet. Like I say, we've got fungi in us, right? You know, it's how the whole nerve synapses works in the body. A lot of communication. But when we get full of toxins, we lose our communication.
So the nervous system is been affected. So would you, in some things, you know, depending on who's saying it or how it's said, it's kind of like the universe is a little angry. So now it's putting it out there.
Yes.
And we're seeing the results of it. But there's going to be a shift, it seems like, no matter what. We're kind of watching it happen.
Yes.
And it depends on, again, who's saying it as to what the result is. I do, too, believe that it's a new beginning. And it's about awareness. But, you know, talking about the grid as well, I just want to go back to it and say, you know, there's about 4,000, I believe, structures on the grid. there's something from the past that's been suppressed.
Yes.
Why has this information been withheld, and how do we bring it back out again? Because there is knowledge there that's always been there, and all of a sudden we forgot about it.
Well,
you can't ignore it anymore.
Yes, yes. Well, it is coming back because conscious beings, people are reincarnating that were the ones that did the work originally, and they're remembering. Or people are being woke up to remember.
Right.
You know, through all the meditative practices, through all the ritualistic practices going on, the offering, the compassion, the peace. You know, peace is in Druidry, peace isn't just a thought, it's a vibration.
Right.
And when your land has a good vibration, you think peaceful. It's a natural, it's a natural occurrence. Animals get along. They're not deranged. They're not manged out. You know, when the land gets tired, geologically, you lose your life forms. And then sparsity comes, desertification, you know. Man is very good at creating deserts. At one time, the planet was totally green, and we managed to contribute to a lot of desertification.
Right.
They're growing in America, something 10 square mile a year, the deserts in America. China's going through, Beijing is going through a whole dust storm thing, right?
It's
and it's
crazy.
from the defoliation. Because you remember, plants give us air, absorb moisture, and give us energy.
Right.
And they do it just for the love of doing it. They want to be here with us. They want to share their fragrances. They want to talk to the bees, you know. And you know, we need to just raise the vibration a little. And that's our stinking thinking. A lot of people, when you go down the streets, like I come in the city, it's like there's all this clutter in the air, but you feel it, but you don't see it.
Right.
But it's all people's uncontrolled nattering going on. The monkey constantly, never good enough. Oh, I don't have this. I need that. You know, and it's literally they're dumping the garbage everywhere.
And
There's
we're all
nobody cleaning it
sensitive
up.
to it because we're not hearing it or seeing it directly. It's vibrating through us, and we're carrying that as well.
Yes.
And it just keeps recirculating.
Yeah, you know, you always know when you're in a room full of love,
Yep.
as opposed to the opposite, right?
Absolutely.
You know, or prejudice when it comes to the table. You always know it, right? Even though if you're a white person with a bunch of people of another ethnicity, we feel it too, right?
Right.
Or reverse it, right? All white people with somebody of another ethnicity. You know, it's interesting because thoughts are things, you know. And we're getting to a point now we can measure all this, right? We can measure that the heart actually sends out energy, right? And if it's not happy, it sends out frantic energy.
Yeah.
So they're teaching people heart math. How do you slow your heart down and get into a good mindset?
Right.
And then you produce all these beneficial hormones and endorphins. So you feel high, right? Riding on a wave.
Okay, I got a question because sometimes even I'm thinking, when we had the earthquake last summer, do you remember that?
Yes.
In Toronto.
September 10th, yeah.
We had the, well, it was
September, I believe.
it was during the G20, or just before the G20.
Oh, right, okay, that was
right?
July, yeah.
And so I was, I think I felt agitated before the earthquake. And after the earthquake, I felt less agitated because I was wanting to get out. I actually wanted to get out of town for the G20. I thought there was going to be some heavy stuff go down. And I really wanted to get out of town on that day. I think it was a Wednesday. And I was planning to get out of town. And I was, but anyways, then the earthquake happened. I didn't feel it. Like a lot of people felt it. I didn't feel it. I was on my bike at the time. But after the earthquake, my almost panic to get out of town disappeared, and I stuck around for another day or two. And we know that animals feel earthquakes.
Yes.
But I'm wondering, you're talking about all this chatter, all this mental or emotional garbage, psychic garbage that's happening in the city. Does this contribute to the problems of the earth that cause earthquakes and stuff like that, or is that perhaps more of a result of what's happening at the earth level?
I would say there's a contribution there. You know, it's interesting when you listen to radio. As soon as it starts to rain, here they're all talking how negative about the rain. Well, if it didn't rain, the planet would fry up, right?
Right.
You know, read a book, do something constructive with that
Yeah.
free time because you couldn't go out and cut your lawn or play golf or whatever, right? And so we just have to learn to be more appreciative of the elements. We're not acknowledging the elements, and they're living things. They are in the stones, right? They're the vitamins. They're all elements, right? Everything that constitutes your body is elemental in nature. And when we cook you, there's a pile of it left.
Right. I think it's the fact that it's become inconvenient because we're too busy planning things we can't even control. Like, we can't control what happened in Japan, yet we try to control our lives in the future. So if the elements interrupt what we have planned, we have an issue with that. So we've disconnected ourselves from nature and the way it operates. And when we receive it, everything kind of flows. But I think that's the mentality we need to go back to a little bit and go with that flow.
Or reverse engineer it. Why don't we start communicating with the nature?
Yeah.
And rather than trying to control it. Let's have some interaction here, right? Nobody wants to really be controlled, do they? Everybody wants their freedom to contribute into the situation.
Absolutely.
Right? And governments all try to control us, don't they, right? They always think what's best for us. We need to start standing up and saying to the government, we know what's good for us. You are not doing your job.
Yeah.
Well, we need to
and you are there for us, so if you're not doing your job, we need to replace.
Exactly.
You know, Canada right now is lacking a good leader. The Canadian, the good leaders somehow don't get through.
Yeah.
Because maybe they don't have the swagger, they don't have...
Or the political system has become so dysfunctional that it only attracts a certain kind of... Maybe psychopathic is too strong a word, but a certain person who's attracted to that power, not attracted to the service of helping the people of the country.
Yeah, or maybe like sociopathic, people who take no responsibility for their actions. So,
exactly.
And you know, government, their role is to make our lives better. So if that's not working, it needs to change. And look at what's happening around the world. We need some of that shaking up down here as well, and have people be confident in their choice to stand up for themselves. You know.
And you know, earlier we were talking about Japanese culture. One thing the Japanese did know was food preparation, and what your thoughts are when you're preparing that food affects the outcome of the meal.
Right.
And also, you know, if you weren't in a good mood, you would walk away, get in a good mood, come back, and then you start cutting your vegetables again. But also, they were the first ones to bring us the ceramic knives. Because when you cut metal into a live vegetable, you break the current that's flowing through the tissue of that particular vegetable. But when you use bone, in the old days it was all wood and bone, farm implements. Everything was wooden, brass, or bone. It doesn't break the conductivity, so the electrons don't have to all line up again and get going before the juice is going. And
you see it, because if you use metal, it turns brown, versus anything else. It stays the way it is, visually as well.
Yeah.
Hey, let's, we've got a big pile of stones that you brought here.
Yes, yes.
Alan, and let's maybe use that as a springboard for the next phase of our conversation here.
Yeah, I brought some old, some antiquity here. This particular stone here is a basalt that was, it's 3.5 billion years old. It's one of the first volcanoes on the planet. We just happen to be situated in Ontario.
Really?
Unbeknownst to a lot of people.
Where?
Yeah, the Medoc region, yeah. Medoc, Ontario.
That's an old volcano?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I actually have the deposit. Like, I'm a prospector as well. I've been prospecting for 25 years. I have some very unique deposits, these all being them here, and they're behind the grid of the planet. You know, magnetism, when we have magnetism, we're grounded, right? It pulls the heavenly forces into the earth, and then they dissipate out as a target wave, like when you throw a pebble in a pond. That's a target wave, but it will go to the edge of the pond and come back and cancel itself. But it'll do many replications of it now. Budweiser's doing it all in the commercial where they drop the beer bubbles come up and form a crown, and then it's the cap on the bottle. Like they took that from nature, right? That whole concept, right?
Right.
And it talks to our subconscious.
Very
And so anyway, so we have this old volcano, and you know, the volcanoes are interesting because when the minerals go into the volcano through the cooking process, they become magnetized, right? There's a certain heat threshold that changes the magnetic density but at very high temperatures, right? And then it squirts out when the volcanoes blow their top. But what do we know about volcanoes? Anywhere we know on the planet right now where there's been fresh volcanoes, the islands are very lush, aren't they? Go into where the ones
Hawaii.
that just pop out of the ocean, and then this jungle shows up. Well, in the volcano are the precursors to RNA and DNA. There's minerals in there that are actually precursors to kickstart the DNA to operate. And that's DNA of everything. It's not just us mammals, right? It's plants as well, right? And then we have the magnetite, and then we go up and we got
This is magnetite here, and I can demonstrate because these are my immortality rings, and as you'll see, they stick. to the magnetite.
So that's your bond. That's your bass player in the band, right? But we also
like
know.
How did you
you.
know? How did you know?
If we just got the bass, you know, it's nice. We got the running rhythm, we got the wave, but we need to bring in the other instruments, the strings and the cymbals, to raise the photonic up, right? To raise it up. So the Celts were famous for standing the stones up, and they would look at what the background geology was already. And a great example of it is Cotswold, England, which is the only spot in Great Britain that was never touched. There's a 50-mile steam train in the Harry Potter movies they're all on. That little strip of England has the nicest weather in England. More sunny days than anywhere else in England. And it's the energy that's spraying out of the stone that is going up to open up the atmosphere. Because atmosphere comes from negative and positive charges.
That is, sorry.
No.
That's reminding me of Wilhelm Reich. And the
orgone energy, And that's what this is here. As we walk up, then we've got a basalt there on top again, and then we've got a Alaska quartz, what they call it, seed crystal, and it produces photons, so it sprays light up from it. And at different times of the year, when you place these on the Earth, you will see a purple beam squirting right out of the top of that, like a photon cannon.
I'd love to see that.
And photons are the smallest light particle coming off the sun. The stones store it. We are it.
Right.
Like, you know, we're walking light, literally. But sometimes we don't shine because maybe we get a little heavy, get a little toxic, you know, get a little inebriated.
So are you saying all quartz does that?
Not all quartz, no.
Why this particular quartz?
Because it's piezoelectric.
Okay.
So the piezo is what's running your phone, all your sensors on all your equipment in the room, all piezoelectricity. It has the ability to, when you program it, it will only remember that and never flux.
Now, how do you know? Sorry, how do you know when one quartz is electric and
you rub them together, they light up.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And the Indians, they used to use the flint. Flint does it as well. Like you start a fire, right? They'd make arrows from it. So when they shot a deer, instant kill, because that electricity of the arrow going through powers, it blows the breaker switch in the body. So you get instant kill, no suffering. And that's where the Indians, at first they were hard to beat, and then Amazonians, they got all kinds of stuff too. That they use poisons from that can immobilize you, right? That turn you into a zombie, right? And then they pick you up and take you back to camp and decide whether they're going to eat you or they're going to let you go, right?
There's so many cool little natural tricks to these things.
Yeah.
I love it.
But it all goes back to the stone. The planet, you know, as Jimi Hendrix said, is the third stone from the sun. And it's unique to all the other planets, the fact that we have lightning, oxygen, and rain. Those three elements create this beautiful thing we know as Terra. And in Druidry, there was an honoring of the Tara, much like in the Vedas out of India. And Druidry, like my handle for my email is Nala the Druid, which is Alan backwards. But Nala was a famous Druid king. That was written up in the Sanskrit in the Vedas. And Druidry, they went all over the planet at one time and passed the knowledge on. There is standing sculptures like this in Inukshuk from the North Pole right to the tip of South America. But nobody knows who told the natives to do that. And the medicine wheels as well, right? And the medicine wheels are just collectors, right? They're like little circuit accumulators. And they go there and they do the ceremony, they drum, they chant, they honor, and that broadcasts out into the landscape. And that was one of the first things the colonists did when they conquered America was bust up. There was over 40,000 medicine wheels in North America recorded before they broke them up. Now there's still some original ones.
What is a medicine wheel?
Medicine wheel is like a stone, placement of stones into a circle.
In a circle? I have to tell you this. I went camping on this island up north, off Manitoulin.
Yes, Manitou, yeah.
And right in the middle of the island there was a grouping of stones. And I mean, me being ignorant, I turned it into a fire pit. But it looked like they had been placed there deliberately in a circle.
Yes. And then they call it, you know, the Druid we are, the men of the rock and the ring. We carry the story of how the stones sing. And then that was banned. You know, all those people were stopped. Every time Christianity took a pagan spot that was energetic, They ripped it down, but they also built their building there because of the energy, the background energy.
One of the things I heard of was when during the Second World War in Britain, when when a lot of things were getting bombed, old churches that were bombed, and they discovered underneath the altars, they found Druid artifacts that were placed there deliberately when they were building those churches to carry on the tradition, I guess.
Like even in Stonehenge, the first stone is called the heel stone. That's the anchoring stone. That's the connection to the grid, and then they lay the circuitry of the stone placement. And the Druids were known for in Camelot, it used to rain a lot from 3 to 5 in the morning, and that's the most beneficial time for it to rain because it wakes. It washes the dust off the leaves of the trees, and also wakes the birds up, and then the birds sing and open up the stomata of the plants.
And then you can have a sunny day, and you've still had enough rain overnight. We had a summer like that a few years ago, where it was doing that every night. It would rain, and then every day it was like a beautiful day. And I thought this is just like Camelot because I'd heard that story before.
And I have quite a few of these. I live in Scarborough, and I have a stone ring around a 100-foot spruce tree, and I have a few of these on the property. But this winter I had 5 snowfalls with a 3/4 of a mile radius, no snow. And last summer I had 4 rains, nobody else got.
Interesting.
And it's all about this ionization again. You create the dynamic when the sun comes up over the horizon. There is an influx of negative ions. It's one of the best times to meditate, to do breathing, and on sunset too. And we're all memorized by the sunrise and the sunset. There's something in our primality, our oldness, our memory, our cellular memory of times past, and it wakes that up,
So I just want to quickly ask, how does the stone structure correlate to the... It's kind of like you're talking about the weather, but it's the same kind of thing that they're recording around the pyramids as well, how it could be the biggest storm, but it just kind of swirls around and doesn't affect it.
Yes.
How does it correlate with the pyramids? Because these have been built pyramids, and these are more, natural stone that's been positioned a certain way.
Yeah, and the pyramid itself, because of the geometric structure, the energy all goes to the point, and it builds up and then it sprays out, right? These are omnidirectional. Okay. Right? They're not just off the top. They're ringing out. Right? And so some areas, like say the Druids knew this. There's spots in England that used to get a lot of thunder, like the voracious cracking, and Arizona's like that. There's some spots in the States where they'll get 1,000 bolts of lightning in a storm, right? Yeah. Just kicking. Luckily, there's nothing there, or else. Yeah. But that's all a discharge. So you can change that energy flow and create sheet lightning. And the Druids were famous for sheet lightning, and sheet lightning gives you uniform nitrogen fixation in a landscape. So everybody gets a shot of voltage at a level they can handle, rather than a bolt striking and searing an area or taking a tree out, right? And the oak tree is the one tree that can court the flash.
I had what, sorry?
The oak tree.
What does it do?
It can court the flash. It has a relationship.
It brings
to Jupiter,
it in.
Yeah, to Thor, to the lightning itself. And it can take the bolt, and maybe lose an arm, but grow back. And I had one up on my farm that got taken down, but it was totally hollow inside. Okay. And you look up 10 feet, and it's all broken. And it had an arm out of it, like that, growing right out of the Cambrian. And you look at this tree, and you'd say, how is that possible? But to endure, the Druid, the oak is a very strong wood. Right. The seawater doesn't rot it. That's why they build the boats of it. It makes lovely furniture. It's a very interesting wood.
It's funny, someone's been trying to gift me this 5,000-year-old oak piece. I haven't picked up, but it's funny that you brought the oak up. Yeah.
I was in one time in Amsterdam in a bar, and there was a beautiful bar top. It was like 2 feet wide and about 8 inches thick, and it was about 60 feet long, and it was oak, and right at the end of it was stamped, taken out of the forests of Ontario in 17-something. Wow. And in this area where all these minerals come from, where the biggest oak grows in the province of Ontario, that the Scotties went to right away and took and sent. And our wood actually beat the Spanish Armada.
Wow.
Was built the boats that beat the Armada.
We don't have a lot of time left, Alan, but I do have a couple of questions here. First of all, can we look at this and we haven't talked about this thing here. Let's have a look at this and just very briefly. We only got a couple minutes.
Yeah, there's a little capacitor. Inside there's a ceramic magnet with a zinc plate and a copper plate on top. A deal-dissel stone, like a labyrinth configuration, copper coil, and then to this little antenna. That's all based off of Wilhelm Reich's work. Some guy, a French guy in the 1600s. There's a fella, a PhD in Belgium that makes these, and he puts these in the earth, and it broadcasts an energetic wave that stimulates the microorganisms to give you fertility. And that's what the Druids did too. They crushed the stones and threw them on the landscape to create fecundity of the earth, the fertility of the earth.
We need that right now.
When the juices are flowing, you know.
Oh yes, and I want to ask you about, because we're talking about, or we have maybe mentioned that we're going through a process of renewal of the earth right now. It's like the earth with the earthquakes is having a bit of a chiropractic adjustment. One of the things that concerns me, I mentioned it earlier in the show even, is the radioactivity that's from these nuclear accidents.
Well, one of the best sequesters of radiation is carbon. So a healthy forest floor is carbon rich. Right now, all our street boulevards are carbon deprived. Hence, the trees are so stressed, they produce minimal foliage and air as a byproduct. So we need to build up the carbon. That's where you hear about worm composting, humus. You know, all these things create the carbon cycle again in the soil. We're burning carbon all the time, the oils, right? But it creates a residual that nature has a hard time to work with.
But with is there an antidote to the radioactivity that's being put into the atmosphere?
Yeah, we need to remineralize the soils to create the fungi, to create the carbon, to create the network that the radiation gets burned up trying to come up through.
Okay.
Right?
Now, and
zeolites are another mineral that's very good for that. Zeolites, boron is another mineral.
Let me ask you, by the way, the D&E show coming on in a couple of minutes here, folks, so if you're tuning in for that, please bear with us. There's part of Ontario up near Bancroft where there's natural radioactivity.
Yes.
You know, just you can walk around in the forest and there's radioactivity.
Yes.
You can detect it with a Geiger counter. With your background, what does that mean, or what?
Those are where the two geologies meet, and there's a seam, and the radiation is sneaking up between the seam where the two contact points of the two types of geology. But again, that can be sequestered through building up the magnetic grid, because they use magnetic cement. They call it heavy cement to shield silos and radiation towers of all the nuclear plants. And also the shungite is very good for this too, right? So either we have to hammer down and reintroduce carbon back into the soil and build up the plant diversity, because there's plants that eat radiation. Not Johnny Pop-Ups, but there's one that eats lead that used to be everywhere in the forest, but they're not there anymore. And so the lead doesn't get transmuted, so now we get lead toxicity in the soil from, again, our emissions, right?
Okay, just one more question here, and we got to have you back, Alan, because again, we
So
wanted to have you on longer today, but
I want to talk about recharging seeds and things like that.
Okay, yeah.
But I want to just briefly, somebody, maybe Mary Hardy was mentioning that the Millennium Dome in London, with its antenna, we didn't even talk about this, but we have the HARP facility in Alaska. Some people are even blaming that for the Japanese earthquake. Some people said that they were trying to build a new control panel using HARP technology with the Millennium Dome in London to, I don't know, control the earth grid or something like that. And now, if you look at the renovations they're doing at BC Place, it looks like they're doing the same kind of thing there. Maybe they're building a HARP facility in Vancouver. Do you have any comments about that before we go off the air?
Yeah, the HARP, I think, we can override the HARP, but we have to raise our consciousness some more. People have to realize we're all very powerful beings, and exercise that in a diplomatic way and in a compassionate way. It's like a freeze frame. We need to stop some of these things from continuing, not through destroying, just by building up our collective consciousness.
Absolutely.
So we have this impermeable membrane that gets back out into the matrix of the planet.
How do we do that?
By feeding the earth, really. Yeah, we have to feed the earth, the oceans again. It's interesting this year, like they attributed all the salmon run to the Icelandic volcano dust that fell into the ocean, and it allowed the fish to actually be able to procreate again.
So that was the earth nourishing itself.
It's always doing it, yeah. That's the history of the planet. So why don't we mimic those processes without the calamity? Because right now it's all flooding, glaciation, volcanic quaking for it to do. We just need to replicate without the calamity.
And work with
And that's
it.
consciousness, right?
Right.
We're using the same system, but in a friendly way.
Okay. All right. Well, great to have you on the show today,
Yeah,
Alan.
no, great to see you.
Thank
all
you.
both,
You
yeah.
will definitely be back as
Now-
long as you want to be back.
I mean, I don't know if you want to give contact information for people.
Yes.
Maybe they want to get in touch
I
with
just
you.
registered a domain name, so we're setting up a site, but it's www.geomancia. That's GEOMANCIA.ca. And we'll be continuing the story via that way.
All right.
So amazing to have you back.
Yep,
Thank
absolutely.
you.
And hope we can get you on again sometime soon.
Okay.
Okay.
For sure.
All right. So that's the show. Aaron, great show
Yes.
today. So hope everybody had a great week. Hope you're going to have a great weekend. And we'll be back on Monday for more Liquid Lunch right here on ThatChannel.com. Stay tuned. D&E show coming up momentarily here on that channel.
Into some